you holding up things?
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. What a fantastic set of conversations we've had today, starting from the inspiring statements by global leaders to the great insights through our regional and technical fora. And this is the perfect segue to today's featured event that looks at the United States government engagement and delivery of disaster-resilient infrastructure around the world. The United States government has invested in building resilient communities and infrastructure globally. They have developed excellence resilience models, including those for nature-based solutions. In this session, we want to share successes and best practices adopted by key US government agencies in building climate and disaster resilient infrastructure around the world. It is my privilege to introduce today's moderator, Ms. Mary Tyler Holmes. She is the Deputy Director of USAID's Indo-Pacific Office. She oversees a portfolio of $124 million covering clean energy, climate change, humanitarian assistance, and digital connectivity. She brings over 2 decades of experience in international development. Over to you, Mary.
Thank you very much. Namaste. Good evening, good afternoon, and good morning to those who are joining from the Western Hemisphere. It is my pleasure to introduce the last panel session of the day, United States Government Engagement and Delivery of Disaster-Resilient Infrastructure Around the World. My name is Mary Tyler, and I am a United States diplomat with USAID, posted here in New Delhi. Today, we heard from such incredible speakers who emphasize the importance of taking a people-centered approach to disaster-resilient infrastructure. The United States is proud to partner together on this conference with India and our CDRI colleagues. The United States itself has faced numerous natural disasters, both at home as well as abroad, whether it's been hurricanes off the Florida coastline, to snowstorms in Montana downing power lines, to tornadoes in Kansas. During these natural disasters, saving the lives of our people has always come first. Abroad, we have been first responders across the U.S. government interagency in Nepal during the 2015 earthquake, countries throughout the Indo-Pacific after the tsunami of 2011, and most recently, we sent our Disaster Assistance Response Team, or DART, from USAID's Bureau of Humanitarian Assistance to support civilians during the conflict in Ukraine. Our work always includes partnering with bilateral host governments, communities, as well as like-minded partners. Countering climate change is a high priority of the Biden-Harris administration, and this topic will be an important theme throughout this session. Tonight, it is my enormous pleasure to share lessons learned from the U.S. government interagency in disaster response, climate change mitigation, and infrastructure. Our panel includes speakers from the United States Army Corps of Engineers, the U.S. Forest Service, the United States Commercial Service, the United States Department of State, and the U.S. Department of Energy. But first, it is my enormous honor to introduce our chargé, Patricia Lucena. Chargé, over to you.
Thank you so much, Mary. Thank you. Distinguished participants and guests, good evening. It is a pleasure to be here with you at this session as we share experiences, best practices, and ongoing efforts adopted by the U.S. government to promote climate and disaster-resilient infrastructures and communities. This session brings together U.S. government agencies to present their perspectives on the opportunities and challenges in building climate and disaster resilience. The expertise and experiences that representatives of the U.S. government will share with us today contribute to the CDRI's objective to advance disaster and climate resilient infrastructure globally. By sharing knowledge on tools, methodologies, approaches, and best practices, we can foster greater collaboration between the U.S. government and CDRI member countries. This will allow partners to learn more about mechanisms they can adopt to enhance infrastructure resilience, as well as prepare for and respond to major disasters within their countries. Since 2000, climate-related disasters have affected almost 4 billion people at an estimated cost of more than $2.2 trillion. Without urgent action, climate change could push an additional 100 million people into poverty by 2030. As temperatures and sea levels rise, people around the world are increasingly experiencing heat waves, droughts, floods, cyclones, and wildfires that upend their lives. Considering the extreme impact the climate crisis creates across the world, it is crucial for all of us to commit to addressing these issues. Agencies and offices across the entire U.S. government are working together and joining with private sector companies and enterprises to build the resilience of infrastructure and communities worldwide. Examples of our whole-of-government approach include the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers developing expertise in flood and hurricane mitigation and coastal protection, the U.S. Forest Service refining forest fire mitigation and response, as well as nature-based solutions, the U.S. Commercial Service promoting technological innovations for disaster risk mitigation among private companies, and the U.S. Department of Energy developing excellent capabilities to cut carbon emissions, expand renewable energy, and clean energy innovations. To mitigate the most catastrophic outcomes of the climate crisis in this century, we need climate mitigation and adaptation outcomes that are both aggressive and ambitious. Addressing climate change and ensuring inclusive, sustainable development has motivated greater alignment and commitments across the 2030 global agendas, such as the Sustainable Development Goals, the Paris Agreement, and the Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction. The Biden-Harris administration has made combating the climate crisis a foreign policy priority. The United States is working to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and increase investments in climate adaptation and resilience. Our support for the Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure, CDRI, is a clear complement to President Biden's call for U.S. leadership and climate action. Engaging the global community, including the private sector, governments, and multilateral agencies, is the only way we will tackle the climate crisis. I look forward to our colleagues' presentations this evening on sharing ideas, thoughts, and best practices on innovative solutions and global collaboration. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chargé, for being with us tonight and for championing Biden-Harris administration's priorities focused on climate change, clean energy, and disaster-resilient infrastructure. Next up, it is our great honor to have Brigadier General Gibbs from the United States Army Corps of Engineers, who will talk to us about USACE's work on disaster-resilient infrastructure.
Namaste and aloha from Hawaii. I am Kirk Gibbs, the commander of the Pacific Ocean Division of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. First of all, to the Acting General Director of CDRI, Mr. Kamal Kishore, and the conference planners. Thank you so much for your gracious invitation to be part of the International Conference on Disaster Resilient Infrastructure. To the U.S. Embassy in New Delhi, Charge d'Affaires Lucina, ma'am, thank you for your support to CDRI and USACE. And to the team at USAID, thank you for recommending our panel participation, and Mary Tyler for moderating this panel. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, or USACE for short, has throughout its long history sought to promote resilience through its diverse and wide-ranging national infrastructure projects and other programs, both in the United States and abroad. Thus, being part of this event is important to us. I am honored to be included among this distinguished panel and look forward to the discussion of how various U.S. agencies can deliver disaster-resilient infrastructure support across the world by explaining what the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers does and how we can collaborate with partners. I wish I could have attended in person, but as many of you may know, I am in Alaska this morning and will join you live from there for the question and answer period. USACE is a 36,000 person strong organization of engineers, scientists, planners, managers, and other professionals positioned across the globe. Through its projects and programs, USACE seeks to find vital engineering solutions for our nation's toughest challenges, which includes climate change. Our organization's mission is to work in collaboration with our partners to secure our nation, energize the economy, and reduce disaster risk. We have 6 major mission areas, and today I will highlight our focus on supporting and providing for disaster-resilient infrastructure within those missions. The top 2 are military construction in support of the Department of Defense and national infrastructure support. Outside of the United States, we are probably best known for our military construction activities. I want to highlight this mission area since U.S. Department of Army installations are required to plan for energy, water, and installation resilience efforts. This includes identifying and addressing existing vulnerabilities to climate-related risks and threats through processes such as master plans and incorporating resilient features into new construction. To support this requirement, we have centers of expertise and have developed a standardized approach to designing energy-efficient, long-lasting, resilient infrastructure for the future. National infrastructure development is also a key and essential component of USACE's mission. Under this umbrella, we are responsible for maintaining over 20,000 miles of inland navigation channels and intracoastal waterways, water resources management, drought management, erosion control, flood risk mitigation and control, and ecosystem restoration. This includes developing coastal risk reduction measures that strengthen coastal systems in case of major hurricanes and severe storms. Both our Department of Defense and national infrastructure missions are supported by our research and development mission. Via its 7 world-class laboratories, USACE's Engineer Research and Development Center, or ERDIC, discovers, develops, and delivers innovative solutions to the nation's toughest challenges in military engineering, installations, civil works, and engineered resilient systems. For example, our Coastal and Hydraulics Laboratory generates products to quantify the risk-based performance of natural, engineered, and hybrid systems threatened by long-term changes, including extreme drought and flood and storm-induced hazards. As I begin to transition now, what brings us here today is our international service mission, which highlights our eagerness to work with international partners to share best practices, lessons learned, and conduct partner-building capacity activities that help us support U.S. Indo-PACOM, USAID, and Department of State initiatives. At USACE, we have experienced immense damages to infrastructure within our mission portfolio due to climate change effects such as sea level change, loss of permafrost, increases in coastal storm frequency, and chronic tidal flooding caused by sea level change. This has catalyzed an organizational emphasis on building and planning for resilience to ensure that our coastal systems are able to withstand future extreme events. For example, after Hurricane Katrina in 2005, we took the lessons learned from the damages to Louisiana's coastal infrastructure and applied them to the planning and design of the $14 billion Greater New Orleans Hurricane and Storm Damage Risk Reduction System. This innovative system uses a full array of measures: natural, nature-based solutions, non-structural, and structural, to ensure that the resulting risk reduction system can withstand similar and stronger storms. In this case and others, we did not and do not plan in a vacuum, but collaborate very closely with communities and stakeholders through public meetings, briefings, workshops, and discussions with business leaders. Additionally, we take into account each community's strengths and weaknesses to address community resilience holistically. This includes environmental justice considerations to ensure that low-income and minority communities are not disproportionately impacted by climate change issues. This is important as lessons learned from examples like Katrina and what other countries endure help aid resilient infrastructure planning efforts. and we can collectively identify best practices to determine what may work best and what does not. As mentioned earlier, one of our key mission areas is international programs. USACE engages in various programs that involve institutional capacity building, strategic partnerships, technical assistance, training, and reciprocal exchanges. By working cooperatively with other nations, we are able to both share and build upon our agency's knowledge base and lessons learned related to resilient infrastructure. At the Pacific Ocean Division, we work with partner nations across the Indo-Pacific in supporting the U.S. Indo-Pacific Command, U.S. Army Pacific, Department of State, and USAID strategies and programs. The Indo-Pacific region is one of the most geographically diverse regions in the world, with significant climate change impacts such as coastal erosion, sea level rise, and water management challenges. When working with our partners, we continue to place emphasis on the three key principles of resilience: to prepare for and minimize impacts of future natural disaster events, to recover from these events, and to adapt after these events. I want to highlight some of our engagements with international partners. For example, we have an existing sister river partnership between the Mississippi and Mekong River Commissions. Through this partnership and our relationship with the Mekong River Commission, we conduct reciprocal exchanges and workshops that promote water resources management, increase the sustainability of infrastructure design, planning, construction, operations, and maintenance, and promote the development of public consultation in the national planning processes, as well as other topics. Other examples include our work with Nepal in the development of their International Airport Disaster Response Plan, performing environmental sensitivity studies off the coast of Maldives and Sri Lanka, modeling groundwater in Mongolia, and conducting other water modeling workshops using our world-class software developed at the Hydraulic Engineering Center across Southeast Asia, overseeing the construction of disaster shelters and other projects in Bangladesh, Nepal, Vietnam, Laos, Mongolia, and others, joining with international partners to performing dam safety analysis in Laos and working with the U.S. Department of Defense to participate in disaster response exercises in Bangladesh, Nepal, Mongolia, and across the lower Mekong and Oceania countries across the Indo-Pacific region. We continue to share and collaborate on methods to improve infrastructure resilience with our international partners. We co-facilitated water management workshops abroad that covered topics like climate change risk-informed decision analysis and conducted climate-related vulnerability assessments with partners. In American Samoa, we conducted a climate-related vulnerability assessment for transportation infrastructure. This was a study to identify and prioritize assets vulnerable to climate change within critical transportation infrastructure, including harbors, airports, and roadways. And this was informed through stakeholder engagement and consideration of social vulnerabilities. Not pictured is what we have been doing in other parts of the world. We have engaged with more than 130 countries in a variety of projects and programs. Many of these activities are part of bigger projects led by international agencies such as UNESCO. For example, we provided climate change adaptation courses in South Africa and Uganda, focusing on droughts. In Brazil, we have an extensive partnership with various governmental agencies to share knowledge through studies, models, and analysis for projects related to water resources engineering. And in Hungary, we held a workshop to support water management along the Tisza River Basin. Our hope is to continue working and collaborating with partners to strengthen infrastructure and community resilience to withstand the changing environment through engineering solutions. In the Army Corps' role as a federal government agency, there are many ways in which USACE can collaborate with CDRI and other international partners to improve infrastructure resilience internationally. Not only do we have a wide portfolio of projects from which to draw from lessons learned and applied application, we also have resources dedicated to promoting the development and application of actionable science targeted at improving resilience to climate change impacts. Components of our agency dedicated to research include the USACE Institute for Water Resources, the Engineering Research and Development Center, and the Engineering Support Center. We also have centers of expertise and communities of practice, such as the Climate Preparedness and Resilience Community of Practice, that employs experts to help our own organization plan, design, engineer, and execute work that enhances the climate preparedness and resilience. USACE is dedicated to working collaboratively with like-minded partners to support initiatives targeted at improving and sharing our understanding, techniques, and programs aimed at improving infrastructure resilience. In closing, I want to thank you again for the opportunity to speak to you today and to be part of this panel. We've learned that when the international community comes together on certain topics such as engineering, we deepen trusted partnerships while building new ones. And when we enhance the resilient capabilities of others to prepare, absorb, recover, and adapt to disasters, we promote peace, stability, and prosperity. And I'm excited to be part of this conversation. Mahalo nui loa.
General Gibbs, for your incredible remarks. Thank you for all the tremendous work that USACE is doing in the greater Indo-Pacific. And it was so wonderful to hear your support for civil-military collaboration, which is so very important in this space. Next up, we will hear from our colleague at the U.S. Forest Service, Justin Green, who will be joining us virtually from Washington, D.C. Justin will focus on nature-based solutions and some of the work that the U.S. Forest Service is currently doing with our CDRI colleagues. Thank you. Justin, over to you.
Thank you very much, Mary Tyler, and thank you, Madam Charge Patricia Lacina, and hello, everyone. My name is Justin Green. I'm the South Asia team lead for the Asia Pacific region at the USDA Forest Service International Programs Office. I'd like to thank everyone for joining, thank the organizers for hosting this event, and CDRI for including the U.S. Forest Service. I would also like to thank all the esteemed speakers on the panel today. My presentation, as Mary Tyler mentioned, will discuss some of the U.S. Forest Service's adaptation capacities domestically and internationally. Next slide, please. The U.S. Forest Service is an agency within the U.S. Department of Agriculture with over 35,000 employees. Domestically, we manage roughly 193 million acres or 78 million hectares of the nation's forests, grasslands, deserts, wilderness, and recreation areas, using what we call a multiple land use management approach. This approach sustains healthy terrestrial and aquatic ecosystems while addressing the needs for resources, commodities, and services. The motto of the U.S. Forest Service is caring for the land and serving people. This phrase really captures the importance of finding balance amongst environmental, social, and economic aspects of natural resource management. It also emphasizes the idea that American communities, just like communities around the globe, are dependent on local and national natural resources for livelihoods, building supplies, energy, food, recreation, and ecosystem services like clean air and water. This concept is central to adaptation practices. Next slide, please. The U.S. Forest Service, the International Programs Office, or IP, works in over 90 countries worldwide on issues ranging from sustainable forest management, invasive species, disaster management, migratory species, environmental crime, enforcement, informing international policy, forest fire, and among others. IP's organizational units that you see here offer a wide variety of technical and operational and programmatic expertise. We function as a technical assistance agency internationally, leveraging the technical expertise of the domestic Forest Service and engaging with international partners to further natural resource management goals globally and bring important technologies and innovations back to the United States. Next slide, please. Forest Service engages with US government agencies, many of them that you see here, and international institutions from all levels, including non-governmental organizations, universities, private sector actors, from policy, management, implementation, monitoring, and research backgrounds, and more. We establish government-to-government partnerships internationally that provide unique capabilities for long-term engagement. U.S. Forest Service strives for ongoing and continuous engagement in countries where we work and really believe in that long-term partnership strategy. Next slide, please. So, why do forests matter in the first place? And one of the major reasons is that forest destruction produces up to a quarter of all global greenhouse gas emissions, while harming forest-dependent communities, ecosystems, and economies. Well-managed forests are essential for curbing emissions and providing a host of services that help societies thrive in the face of climate change. Properly managed forests are crucial to mitigation and adaptation efforts. Next slide, please. So forest-related adaptation essentially comes down to changing or controlling the trajectory of succession. This could be in terms of planting or thinning trees, or using controlled burns to reduce the risk of wildfire, engaging in forest restoration activities, or developing planting sites and establishing species selection, species mix, etc. And high quality, dependable scientific data is crucial to informing these decisions. Implementers and policymakers require high quality data, models, tools to identify the right interventions for the right objectives in order to produce sustainable long-term impact. And quality science really helps make these decisions more possible. Next slide, please. Adaptation strategies use this data across multidisciplines, and research across these multiple dimensions is needed to informing effective adaptation strategies. For instance, restoration programs require quality data to inform native tree species selection, mix, and placement. Communities must be engaged for long-term stewardship and success of the program. Indigenous knowledge must be included to provide holistic and informed approaches to the ecology and the landscape. Alternative generating income activities supplement potentially lost income from the previous uses of that land. And financial support should be available for not only the planting of trees, but also the long-term survivability and tending of those trees in the coming years. This systems-oriented, holistic approach to technical and financial support, policy development, and implementation is essential to achieving results that are sustainable. Next slide, please. We currently work with CDRI on issues of nature-based solutions and various nature-based solution initiatives. We're drawing on the technical expertise of the Forest Service and partners to engage in research and pilot activities on various topics related to NBS. And the overall goal is to scale these initiatives up and mainstream these efforts beyond pilot activities. Next slide, please. The forest adaptation plans are plans where USDA is just one of 15 agencies that will submit an adaptation plan by spring of 2022. These plans aim to evaluate climate impacts and prioritize their greatest risks. They will address not only natural resource management issues, but environmental justice in the context of climate adaptation, workforce, climate literacy, and ways in which agencies can leverage USDA's climate hubs, their climate research hubs, to support mission delivery and have potential for high partnership engagement. Next slide, please. These are an example of some of the online resources that USDA and partners have established to bridge the gap between scientific research and on-the-ground land management. The climate hubs, the Climate Change Resource Center, Collaborative Forest Landscape Restoration Program, and USFS Adaptation website are just a few examples of some of the online data services where data that are aimed at providing the information needs for resource managers, farmers, ranchers, forest owners, tribal authorities, academia, and the general public to have reliable and readily available scientific research for practical application. Next slide, please. This is a few examples of some of the work that Forest Service does internationally. And these are global programs that work across multiple countries. Just to name a few, Silvocarbon is a US government interagency technical cooperation program aimed at strengthening the capacity of selected countries to measure, monitor, and report on carbon in their forests and lands. The Sustainable Wetlands Adaptation and Mitigation Program, or SWAMP, is a collaborative effort by the Center for International Forestry Research, or C4, and the U.S. Forest Service with support from USAID to collaborate with governments, academia, and non-governmental partners around the world in support of efforts to collect quality data on wetland ecosystems for conservation and restoration. Next slide, please. International programs and Forest Service works in over 90 countries on a variety of natural resource management programs. Here, all the countries that you see highlighted are some of the countries we work in, and a sampling of some of our adaptation-related activities. Just to highlight a few, iTree programs in Mexico, India, and Bangladesh, as well as other countries, allow users to quantify environmental services and the value of trees in urban landscapes. iTree has the potential to help address larger social issues and serve as a platform to educate the public and decision makers about the importance of urban trees and how to advocate for their protection, proper maintenance, and expansion. The Lebanon Reforestation Initiative focuses on introducing technical practices for native tree nursery production, assisting local communities throughout the country to restore communal forest lands and support other sustainable landscape restoration practices. Youth Conservation Corps programs in Honduras, Bangladesh, Colombia, Morocco, and many other countries work with youth to build technical and soft skills while instilling an appreciation for environmental stewardship and creating employment opportunities. We also have disaster management and wildfire programs that engage the U.S. Forest Service's expertise in responding to disaster and wildfire in technical cooperation programs globally. Next slide, please. And finally, the social dimensions of adaptation and natural resource management activities are extremely important. And we believe that you cannot effectively manage land if you do not engage people. And this includes inclusion at all levels and scales and leveraging expertise at all levels and scales, which is crucial to successful natural resource management. We try to incorporate these principles and this vision into all of our work internationally. Next slide, please. And here are just some links to some of the climate hubs that I mentioned, other sources of research and information on climate change, climate data, adaptation, and mitigation. And with that, I just want to thank everyone for including the Forest Service, and I'll hand it back over to you, Mary Tyler. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jason. We appreciate your emphasis on data-driven solutions, as well as the importance of taking an anti-racist approach in supporting forestry and its linkages to preventing climate change. Next up, it's my pleasure to introduce Jing Liu from our U.S. Commercial Service. I know that there's a number of private sector companies who are attending this online virtually, who are very eager to hear your talk. So thank you very much, Jing.
Thank you so much. Oh. Can you hear me? Let's see. Oh, there it is. Ah. That was the warm-up. Namaste and greetings of the day. My name is Jing Liu, and I'm a commercial officer at the U.S. Embassy in New Delhi. And it's a pleasure and honor to be here today amongst my interagency colleagues and speaking with you. I want to especially thank the organizers, CDRI and USAID, for having me here today. Today I represent the U.S. Commercial Service, which is a part of the International Trade Administration and the U.S. Department of Commerce. The Commercial Service is the primary trade promotion arm of the U.S. government, and our organizational mission is to strengthen bilateral trade and also to promote investment into the United States. I will now ask our technical assistants to play a short video providing an overview of our core services, and then I'll share some examples of our work in disaster resilient infrastructure. Please play the video.
Many U.S. companies of all sizes grow their business by exporting products and services to buyers around the world. If you want to start or expand your international sales to one market or 100, we'd like to help. We are the U.S. Commercial Service, part of the U.S. Department of Commerce's International Trade Administration. We are the export experts, with a global network of trade professionals located in more than 100 U.S. cities and in U.S. embassies and consulates in over 75 countries. This is unparalleled global reach that can help any exporting business. The key focus of the U.S. Commercial Service is to help small and medium-sized businesses, the foundation of the U.S. economy, increase exports and expand into new markets abroad. When U.S. companies succeed abroad, everybody wins. Exporting supports more good-paying jobs in America and U.S. economic prosperity. 95% of the world's consumers live outside the United States. We advise U.S. businesses on what these consumers need and how to market them, online, on the ground, and around the world. We provide valuable and easy-to-access tips, tools, resources, and market intelligence. We offer personalized, one-on-one export counseling and other services tailored to unique business needs, leveraged by a global network unsurpassed anywhere else. We help businesses select the best markets and sales channels, understand the rules and regulations, find qualified partners, connect with buyers around the world, and recommend ways to finance exports. We also advocate on behalf of U.S. companies bidding on foreign public sector contracts so they can compete on a level playing field. Our U.S.-based experts help develop export plans and strategies to get you started. Our international experts provide the market intelligence and connections to help businesses get that first sale in that first export market, or numerous sales in multiple markets. And every day, our in-country staff advocates on their behalf for easier market entry, lower tariffs, and even help unstick products delayed in customs. Our staff is dedicated to working with businesses every step of the way to see them grow globally and succeed in the international marketplace. Whether new to exporting or experienced global professionals looking for more market share, they can contact the export pros at the U.S. Commercial Service. Visit trade.gov to learn more. Brought to you by the U.S. Commercial Service, part of the U.S. Department of Commerce's International Trade Administration.
I hope you found the video informative, and I want to highlight a few areas of our work that may be most interesting to this audience. First, the US is a large and geographically diverse country that has extensive experience with many types of natural disasters, from tropical storms to wildfires to earthquakes and droughts. According to a 2019 report from the US Government Accountability Office, from 1980 to 2018, the US experienced 254 climate and weather disasters, each causing more than $1 billion in damage. The collective damage was more than $1.6 trillion. In addition to emergency and risk management planning, the right technology, products, and services are key to creating disaster-resilient infrastructure. For the government representatives in the audience, the U.S. Commercial Service can help you identify cutting-edge solutions to meet your infrastructure needs, and these solutions are also best in class for life cycle value. For our private sector friends, the U.S. Commercial Service can similarly help you find high-quality, innovative products, solutions, and partners for almost any niche. We also have a federal government program called Select USA, which helps companies of all sizes find the resources, network, and market intelligence necessary to successfully invest in the United States. In sum, work with us to access a network of over 100 US offices and leverage our presence in almost 80 global markets to 1, disseminate tenders and project opportunities, 2, identify the best technology solutions for your problem, 3, find US-based partners, and 4, craft an investment strategy for the US. While the focus on disaster-resilient infrastructure is relatively new for my organization, we are pleased to have recently held an inaugural organization-wide program called the Disaster Resilience US Global Technology Forum. The 4-month virtual program took place from November 2021 to March 2022. The commercial service team counseled over 50 US export-ready companies within the disaster resilience space in international business development and provided market intelligence from more than 40 international markets. The program's theme, prepare, respond, recover, and reconstruct, showcased US solutions with a focus on flood mitigation and wildfire resilience. The 50 companies were offered business-to-business and business-to-government matchmaking programs, as well as informational briefings. The initiative resulted in over 1,000 meetings and 20 information sessions. Forum participants heard from over 50 subject matter experts across the U.S. Department of Commerce, other federal government agencies, and global commercial service offices. To highlight the impact of just one event, our team offered 15 U.S. companies within the aerial and communication subsectors the opportunity to introduce their solution to over 50 Greek ministry officials. Under the initiative, the U.S. industry leaders were able to fast-track their entry into the Greek market and expeditiously respond to the government of Greece's needs stemming from last year's devastating wildfire season. Forum participants cited benefits as rapidly forming global connections, ease of exporting to new markets, and simplicity in identifying export sales leads. In addition to the forum, the commercial service is facilitating trade in the disaster resilience space at the grassroots level. One example is our work with U.S. company Legacy Manufacturing to introduce its flood barrier technology in India. The company manufactures flood barriers, automatic door bottoms, and door seals to control the overflow of water. Given the heavy rainfall in many areas of India and the expenses from water damage, we believe that Legacy Manufacturing's proprietary technology offers a strong value proposition for the Indian market. In addition to introducing the company to our colleagues in the U.S. consulate in Chennai, we are also assisting the company with finding a business partner in flood-prone areas such as Kerala, Maharashtra, and Kolkata. In another example, the commercial service recently helped U.S. company Blue Dome, a provider of visual inspection technology for road infrastructure, with finding a partner to implement a pilot project for the National Highways Authority of India in Odisha. Blue Dome uses its proprietary artificial intelligence, machine learning, and image processing technologies to eliminate reliance on manual inspections to deliver accurate results and to improve road safety for workers and the public. Continuous monitoring and assessment of infrastructure assets reduce the cost of maintenance and the chances of catastrophic failures triggered by natural disasters. If you have questions about the U.S. Commercial Service and what we can do to support your needs, please reach out to me. Next slide. Now I'd like to pivot and introduce the work of a sister trade promotion agency, the U.S. Trade Development Agency, also known as USTDA. My colleague, Ms. Minaz Ansari, couldn't be here today, so I will present this overview on her behalf. Next slide. The U.S. Trade Development Agency helps create U.S. jobs through the export of U.S. goods and services for priority infrastructure projects in emerging economies. USTDA achieves this mission by funding feasibility studies, technical assistance, and pilot projects that integrate U.S. private sector innovation into infrastructure projects at the critical early stages when design choices and technology options will be determined. The agency also connects overseas project sponsors with U.S. partners through reverse trade missions, industry conferences, and expert workshops. Since 1983, USTDA has sponsored more than 190 activities to support the development of energy, transportation, and telecommunication infrastructure in India. USTDA works with both private and public sector partners in India to introduce innovations that modernize and expand critical infrastructure needed for growth. Recent examples of USTDA's work in India include funding technical assistance to help the Airport Authority of India create 20-year master and capital improvement plans to sustainably expand the operational capacities of the Kolkata International Airport, and funding a pilot project and feasibility study to assess the viability of implementing a cloud-based emergency management and operation system at airports managed by the Airports Authority of India. To learn more about USTDA, please visit ustda.gov or contact Ms. Minaz Ansari. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jing, for emphasizing the importance of our collaboration with public-private partnerships. We cannot succeed in this space without support from the private sector, so thank you very much. I'd like to introduce our next speaker, Matt Ingeniery, who is Chief of the Economic Growth Unit here at the U.S. Embassy in New Delhi. Thank you, Matt.
Am I coming through? Great. Thank you so much, Mary Tyler, and all the members of the ICDRI team. It is an honor to speak on this panel and discuss how we in the U.S. government can better support global sustainability, climate risk adaptation, and resilient infrastructure. CDRI has been a leader in gathering experts and decision makers across the globe to focus on this important agenda, and we are constantly looking for ways to collaborate with partners to enable resilience of communities and infrastructure systems. Thank you for convening us all today. Through collaboration with like-minded governments, the United States helps to develop and promote programs and partnerships that enable regional connectivity and growth, infrastructure resilience, and environmentally and socially sustainable development. Almost 20 years ago, the U.S. government, in cooperation with other donors and private organizations, ensured that critical needs were met in the aftermath immediately following the December 26, 2004 tsunami. Within hours of the tsunami's strike, U.S. embassies were on the ground working with national and regional governments to disperse emergency funds, identify relief needs, and provide rapid assistance. The United States called together and led an international core group, quote unquote, that included Australia, Japan, India, Canada, the Netherlands, and the UN to coordinate the first stages of the international response. This core group was the precursor of the Quad that we work with today, and ensured that countries did not duplicate the efforts of others. The coordination effort required for dealing with the tsunami was one of the most complex ever attempted by the U.S. government, and our task force provided vital insight and guidance that helped to shape the overall U.S. response and served to guide future coordination of U.S. and international relief efforts. This response was built on close work between U.S. and its foreign colleagues and counterparts. CDRI creates an opportunity to institutionalize and strengthen modes of cooperation promoting resiliency in the face of natural disasters for the United States and all member countries, expanding from disaster response, like in 2004, to the construction and maintenance of improved and more resilient infrastructure. Physical infrastructure is integral to economic development, resilience, and ability to reduce the risk of disasters and respond to them. Infrastructure is also highly vulnerable to climate change and disasters. CDRI's mission promotes investment in disaster and climate resilient infrastructure and supports broader U.S. government objectives, particularly in the Indo-Pacific region. The U.S. government's decision to join CDRI was a strategic one, founded in the desire to bring the benefits of resilient and sustainable development by sharing our knowledge and expertise and support joint solutions. Our commitment to resilient infrastructure and the cooperation needed to make that a reality is clear from Administrator Power's leadership of CDRI as co-chair. Along with CDRI, U.S. initiatives like the Blue Dot Network, a multilateral effort to promote principles of sustainable infrastructure development around the world, encourage high standards and transparent infrastructure development that is attractive to private sector investment. Active U.S. membership in CDRI is also a key part of the administration's new Indo-Pacific Strategy. As Secretary Blinken said in December, the United States has long been, is, and always will be an Indo-Pacific nation. President Biden announced an updated Indo-Pacific strategy in March, and we have been speaking with our partners and friends across the region to share our vision for the Indo-Pacific. Our updated Indo-Pacific strategy is fundamentally an affirmation of our values. It lays out our vision for a free and open Indo-Pacific that is connected, prosperous, secure, and resilient. The Indo-Pacific strategy will deepen the role of the United States in the region and strike, with our partners and build our collective capacity to confront 21st century challenges together. Our first core objective is free and open. That means people should be free in their daily lives and live in open societies. Individual countries should be able to choose their own path and their own partners, and collective problems should be dealt with openly. Rules agreed to transparently and applied fairly, and, this is the part relating to infrastructure, goods and ideas and people should flow freely across land, cyberspace, and the open seas. Second, we want to increase the interconnectedness of the region. With our partners, we are assembling the broadest, most effective coalitions to tackle global challenges and to work towards our shared goals. Third, we aim for broad-based, inclusive prosperity. For the United States, this means increasing U.S. investment at home and abroad, unlocking the potential of the private sector, and helping to deliver high-quality infrastructure. We are focused on economically empowering our middle class by facilitating trade, strengthening supply chains, and directing heightened attention to labor and environmental standards and clean energy. Fourth, we are cognizant of our shared security challenges. As threats to security continue to evolve, we have focused our strategy on integrated deterrence. Fifth, we aim to help the region become more resilient, whether in the face of the next pandemic or in dealing with the effects of climate change. Across the Indo-Pacific, people are feeling the catastrophic impact of climate change. 70% of the world's natural disasters strike in this region, and over 90 million people in the region were affected by climate-related disasters in 2019. We are leading efforts to bring the international community together to build greater resiliency against future shocks. So, as you can see, our work together in the CDRI supports our core objectives, promoting a region that is free and open, interconnected, prosperous, and resilient. India's role in creating the CDRI and the United States joining as a founding member also demonstrates the ever-increasing depth and breadth of our bilateral relationship as a global comprehensive strategic partnership. As the world's two largest democracies, the United States and India, share a commitment to protect our citizens and have helped to provide security and stability in the Indo-Pacific region that has underpinned our economic prosperity. The new Indo-Pacific strategy explicitly affirms U.S. support for India's continued rise in leadership, which we view our active role in CDRI as promoting. In addition, a major focus in elevating our bilateral relationship has been to increase India's transportation, digital, and energy connectivity by reducing logistics costs and increasing flexibility and secure global value chains. All these elements are bound together by the need to increase the resilience and quality of infrastructure in India and throughout the region. We celebrate India's recent launch of Gati Shakti, the Prime Minister's landmark program to promote widespread infrastructure and logistics development through coordinated infrastructure planning. We hope Gati Shakti can be a catalyst for India's continued economic growth and prosperity, and will support India's rising regional leadership. We applaud this effort and are working closely with the Indian government to identify ways the U.S. government can support Gati Shakti's success and complement ongoing infrastructure collaboration under the revived U.S.-India Transportation Partnership. Our embassy has played a convening role, bringing together interagency partners such as USTDA, USAID, and the recent visit in December of the USA's, I believe the first in 4 years, to offer technical expertise, capacity building, commercial exchanges, and private sector investment across infrastructure sectors, including civil aviation, ports, inland waterways, and road transport. To conclude, it is clear from all that we are doing together that the United States and India share a common vision for the region, one that is free, open, secure, and prosperous, and that our futures are inextricably linked. Obviously, should have changed that word. Our partnership with other nations on this common vision through valuable organizations like CDRI enable us to meet challenges head-on and repeatedly achieve great things in deepening the resilience and our shared pool of expertise, interconnections and knowledge that are increasingly critical for the Indo-Pacific and the world. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Matt. Thank you, Matt, for outlining the whole-of-government approach by the Department of State in the event of an emergency. It's really our embassies on the front line and its State Department that leads that coordinating role, whether through an ambassador or a chargé in the event of an emergency. So thank you for your emphasis on that, as well as the new Indo-Pacific Strategy, spearheaded by Secretary Blinken, in close coordination with our National Security Council colleagues in the Biden-Harris administration. Thank you very much. I'm pleased to introduce our final speaker for the evening and of the day, Mahmoud Jardina, who comes to us from the Department of Energy. He is the Energy Attaché at the U.S. Embassy here in New Delhi. The energy portfolio is very much also whole of government here at the Embassy in New Delhi, comprising over 7 interagency government agencies, as well as over 6 ministries that we coordinate with the government of India. It's a massive portfolio that's incredibly important to promoting clean energy and combating climate change. Thank you, MJ.
Thank you. Am I on? Hello? Yeah. Thank you, Mayor Tyler. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to join CDA, our Chargé Lassina, as well as my interagency colleagues here at Post, as well as who have joined us virtually to present to this global distinguished audience. My name is MJ Jardani, and I'm the Department of Energy Attaché here at Post, as my colleague Mary Tyler introduced me. Today, I will be sharing a snapshot of various U.S. Department of Energy activities that are designed to improve the resilience of our energy system and society. It is impossible to cover all the varied research, development, demonstration, and deployment activities that DOE leads in this area. However, I will share highlights from examples across the DOE power-related portfolio. I hope this gives you an idea of areas where CDRI, member countries, and partners can collaborate with DOE on the important topic of energy and power resilience, which is central to the global goal of climate adaptation. Slides, please. The mission of the Department of Energy, next slide, please. The mission of the Department of Energy is to ensure America's security and prosperity by addressing its energy, environmental, and nuclear challenges through transformative science and technology solutions. When it comes to DOE's role in infrastructure resilience, science and technology are at the core. As you will see from the activities I'm presenting on today, the application of our science technology will vary from early stage research of resilience enhancing energy technologies all the way to direct support of local governments improving their own energy infrastructure and management of certain deployment activities. Next slide, please. Resilience is one of the goals we have for society. We can improve our focus and impact if we define resilience in relation to other goals, such as efficiency and sustainability. When we do this, we describe resilience as being focused on withstanding and recovering from the shocks and stresses. This is different than efficiency approaches, which focus on improving the performance of society during day-to-day normal activities, and sustainability-focused approaches that concentrate on avoiding long-term overshoots and collapse conditions. All three goals come together within DOE's mission space, and solutions for one goal impact how we achieve the others. It is important to consider that issues I'm presenting on today do not exist in a vacuum. The resilience activities interplay and augment the activities focused on efficiency and sustainability. Next slide, please. Notice that I used the term society on the last slide. We are not purely focused on improving infrastructure for the sake of infrastructure improvement, but rather to sustain life with acceptable standards. When we lose electricity, which is the keystone infrastructure for extended periods, we lose other essential services like communication, sanitation, and medical assistance. This was felt acutely in the United States after the impacts of Hurricanes Irma and Maria in 2017. I have included an excerpt from a news article written after a grid outage impacted Puerto Rico, again 9 months after the initial damage from the hurricanes, which shows that interruption and damage to the keystone infrastructure, which is power, results in additional consequences due to core dependency on energy. Next slide, please. Following the Fukushima nuclear power accident in 2011, I spent a few years working at the U.S. nuclear regulator on implementation of design modifications at the U.S. nuclear power plants to withstand severe weather conditions, flooding, and earthquakes, based on lessons learned from the Fukushima accident. However, in today's presentation, I will focus on the types of activities that DOE leads to improve the resilience of the energy system and our society. Beginning with early stage research and development, DOE supports research into how to predict the grid and society's performance subject to disrupting events. We also develop new technologies that allow grid operators and citizens to build a more flexible and resilient system. At later R&D stages, we build tools and approaches to help evaluate the resilience of our power system, especially to estimate the consequences of present and future outages and help electric utility companies integrate these approaches into existing investment planning paradigms. And as technologies and approaches mature, we support demonstration and deployment by engaging with communities to provide the technical assistance necessary to make smart resilience investment decisions. We also administer and support decision-making connected to certain federal infrastructure resilience investment, such as the recent Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act signed into law in November 2021. Next slide, please. DOE researchers are establishing metrics that can be used to estimate the economic value of a more resilient grid. Historically, these economic values have been difficult for grid planners to quantify due to the lack of robust historic database sets, the uniqueness of major disruptions, and the dispersed nature of indirect economic impacts. The three capabilities presented here, the ICE calculator, the POET process, and the customer damage function calculator, are each at various stages of maturity, with ICE being used by the power industry and regulators today, while POET and CDF are still at various stages of development. Next slide, please. We are also recognizing that many of the human consequences of major disruptions are not well qualified, and in some cases are missed entirely by economic metrics. That's why a team at DOE researchers designed the social burden metric and associated quantification approaches. Social burden quantifies the effort that our society expends during disruptions in order to meet their basic needs. By using social burden, we can quantify the extent of which sections of society are expending more of their effort obtaining food versus shelter, for instance, during disruptions. The full set of human needs are formulated using leading social justice theories along with direct community engagement. By doing so, The metric informs whether our grid and its interdependencies infrastructure are responding equitably during disruption. This resilience component of equity is often underrepresented component of most infrastructure investment plans. Next slide, please. Now I want to describe how DOE activities, the resilience, including the resilience modeling, the metric and valuation approaches, and the community-engaged technical assistance are coming together to support multi-billion grid modernization decisions. Since Hurricane Maria and Irma, DOE has been supporting the recovery efforts in Puerto Rico by providing technical assistance to planners, investing massive amounts in the recovery and grid modernization efforts. This led to recently establishing an effort named PR100 to seek to achieve resilience alongside decarbonization and improve energy equity for people of Puerto Rico. This is a first-of-a-kind study bringing together the best of DOE's capabilities, which can provide a blueprint for grid planning worldwide. Next slide, please. Now, I would like to take this opportunity to highlight an important activity that is bringing DOE's technical assistance and energy system planning capabilities to the international community. Through the Net Zero World Initiative, NZWI, the U.S. government is partnering with countries and philanthropies to access global energy system, decarbonization, and climate resilience by spurring investment in all regions of the world to increase the speed and scale of transition to net zero systems. The Net Zero World Initiative enables country partners to harness the power and technical expertise of U.S. federal agencies, world-class U.S. Department of Energy national laboratories, industry, and others, in collaboration with global partners and philanthropies to meet the critical objectives of enabling countries to achieve system-level decarbonization, spurring equitable and inclusive economic growth, and fostering exchanges between U.S. leaders and among countries to replicate successes, build confidence, and inspire transformational actions across countries. Finally, I would like to note some of the activities where DOE and its national laboratories have engaged internationally to support disaster-resilient infrastructure. DOE and the U.S. Agency for International Development have partnered with the Ministry of Energy and Mines in the People's Democratic Republic of Laos to develop Laos Power Sector Resilience Plan. DOE and USAID also partnered with the Electricity Generating Authority of Thailand on battery storage system support. Moreover, DOE supports the ASEAN Energy Resiliency Task Force and the North American Resilience Model, to name a few. If you notice, on my PowerPoint presentation, I added points of contact for each of the slide and the special technical areas. If we go to the next slide, I shared the technical with permission from the contacts, the technical leads. We shared their contact information. Please feel free to reach out to them in case you have additional questions on these specific. DOE stands ready to support the U.S. Interagency in international collaboration. Thank you.
Thank you very much, MJ, for your remarks. They're so key. As we all know, energy is the keystone to sustainable development, and decarbonization is a major priority of the U.S. government and our partners around the world. Thank you. So at this time, we're going to take questions from our virtual audience. I'll turn it over to the audience, and we look forward to your questions. Well, at the moment, there doesn't seem to be any questions from, oh, thank you. Go ahead. Go ahead. I see someone from our in-house audience has a question.
So I'm Ratnesh. So my question is, U.S. Engineering Corps, Army Corps. So basically, being a defense organization and some civil organization, so is there any fundamental approach in, for the climate change initiative or something? So I hope I got my question clear. So being an defense organization and being a civil organization, some other companies that work in this field. So is there any different approach to doing things?
So you mentioned about different approaches to tackling climate change across the interagency?
Yeah. One side is the technology, other side is the organization perspective, like how we do.
Okay. Maybe we can talk to a bit about our whole of government approach in how we tackle climate change. And I'll turn that question over to Matt, who can speak to the importance of that under the Indo-Pacific Strategy.
I was rooting for the Chargé, but sure.
Or the Chargé as well.
I'll let Matt take it.
Obviously, this is a top priority for the Biden-Harris administration. And you saw from kind of my discussion of the strategy, where we're trying to collect inputs from all of our federal agencies where relevant and then synthesize them. In our government for foreign affairs, that's primarily the function of our National Security Council, which I think has a fairly broader mandate than most and certainly broader than it has historically, and is increasingly engaged in economic policy issues and environmental policy issues, particularly regarding climate change. There was a lot of work on infrastructure under the previous administration, under the BUILD Act, sort of launching the DFC and reviving older lines of work, such as under EXIM, and you've seen that sort of, I'd say not so much change is expanded upon with the coordination that you're seeing on climate and kind of the breadth of presentations you saw here. So, fortunately, we're all friendly and we get along at Mission India, but it's obviously a lot to keep track of and coordinate. At the mission level, we have a series of interagency working groups that include both civilian agencies and the military representatives at the mission, whether with our Office of Defense Sales or the Defense Attaché's office. The one I'm most directly involved with that's relevant to this grouping is the Indo-Pacific Strategy Working Group, which we're pretty proud has actually been cited by our bureau in Washington as a model for interagency coordination on the Indo-Pacific for other embassies. I believe we have other climate groups and clean energy subgroups and whatnot that serve a similar function. So kind of on the Washington side, you have this pretty well-established interagency coordinating mechanism that was originally set up for kind of defense and strategic issues that has kind of spilled over and overlaps between the NSC and our National Economic Council. And then at the embassy, obviously the buck stops with the Chargé, but we try to keep her desk pretty clean by coordinating and creating structures kind of at the working level where we stay on the same page by working with each other.
Madam Chargé, do you have anything to add?
I think if I understood your question, part of your question was about how the Army Corps of Engineers works between defense and civil acts. Was that part of what you were asking?
So my question was basically, so there are like public works departments, and there are like U.S. Engineering Corps, which is like more of a defense-backed organization. So when we approach a project or any initiative to implement, so are there fundamental differences? Like maybe civic bodies has to look at the revenues, how they will collect and how they will implement the project over a long time. Or maybe for defense you get, or maybe government is supporting. So long run initiatives, or those kind of things. So are there any fundamental differences in approach of these two kind of organizations?
Well, the Army Corps of Engineers has traditionally not just built things like at Army bases overseas, but they have traditionally worked on all kinds of great works like flood control, all of those kinds of things. So I think that they're much more integrated into the structure of big projects than many other defense types organizations would be. So it's always been relatively seamless from the perspective of the population that's receiving the service, how that gets paid for, who deals with that, whether it's sandbags when there's a flood, or trying to do a long-term plan. There's a really, as Matt said, there's a great amount of coordination and a lot of fluidity, a lot of communication between the organizations. So I think that we do a pretty good job of moving between those spheres, maybe better than we give ourselves credit for, frankly. But there is a difference. Like, it would be more unusual to see like a civil organization doing something for the Department of Defense with, so depends on what the actual project is, I guess. Yeah. But now that you mention it, I guess it would seem unique to an outsider. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Thank you. We also have Brigadier General Gibbs online here to add any additional thoughts to that. Thank you. And thank you, Madam Chargé.
Madam, thank you very much. And thank you for this opportunity, Mary Tyler. I would say that the Army as a whole, as an agency, you're absolutely correct. All of the infrastructure, and the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers builds a lot of infrastructure on military installations, whether it's Army, Air Force installations, and each of those facilities that we build take into account the climate change. They take into account their energy saving. We continually are updating our designs to account to ensure that we're keeping the climate safe. And the Army as a whole, with the very aggressive plan based on the administration's priorities, our vehicle fleet, that will change very soon as we get less fuel burning vehicles out there in our vehicle fleet. Now, you brought up a great point. I sit here in Alaska this morning. I've been up here this week. I brought all of my senior leaders from across the Pacific Ocean Division of the Corps. And the past 2 days, Monday and Tuesday, we have totally focused on climate change aspects. And we're at the tip of the spear here in Alaska. We work closely with the communities, state agencies, our federal agencies, to develop, design, and construct civil works projects. Critical ones up here include coastal erosion projects. There's 2 of those. Flood risk management projects here in Seward, Alaska, that we're getting into design right now. And that often is not what is known about the Corps of Engineers across in the international world. As I highlighted, that's primarily what we're known for is military construction on installations. But we're particularly have an incredible amount of expertise, and I brought them here to Alaska to spend time with my team as we look at the impacts of the climate change that has occurred in the state of Alaska. So I hope that helped. Thank you for the time.
Can I ask you, is that snow out the window?
Yes. I wish you could see out this window. It's absolutely beautiful.
Wow.
Plenty of snow, but I will tell you that what we took a boat tour yesterday, and what we're looking at is how glaciers, how much we're losing of glaciers melting each year, and it's incredible. Such an impact up here with the climate change for sure, but it's beautiful.
Wonderful. So are there any additional questions from the audience? Kamal.
So thank you very much. I think first of all, I have to say that what you presented here in terms of capacities and possibilities is really impressive, but it is also overwhelming. So you don't know where to begin and where to identify areas of collaboration. So how do we come up with something very specific? It doesn't have to be narrow, but it has to be something specific. Can we, for example, Brigadier General Gibbs talked about flood protection systems. So our flood protection systems in India are challenged. CDRI member Bangladesh, flood protection systems are challenged because we are experiencing different kinds of stream flows, different kinds of rainfall, and so on. So how do we upgrade those systems for the future? How do we sort of identify something a specific multi-country initiative around a theme like that? How does America take care of the inventory of its bridges? I'm sure some of those bridges are close to completing their life cycle. Do you upgrade them overnight, or do you have a graduated strategy? So, you can build an initiative which is at the strategic level as well as at the engineering level. Department of Energy, the theme of this conference is how do we make the transitioning energy systems resilient. We have a case of a solar farm, a solar power farm in India, which is supplying an airport and went underwater, twice, 2 years in a row. So, you're solving one problem, zero carbon or low carbon energy, but that system itself is not shock proof. So the point I'm trying to say is that if you can identify 3, 4, 5 such specific things which have resonance across a number of CDRI countries, then we can begin to develop some concrete initiatives around it. It doesn't have to be done in a hurry. It can be done in a very thoughtful, deliberative manner. But then I think what you presented would be a little bit less overwhelming. Thank you.
Yes, please.
So one of the reasons we find Gati Shakti so promising for what we're doing in India is precisely what you just elucidated. It has to start with a conversation. It's really not, when we have teams come out from Washington with kind of a set idea of we want to do X, and we come across the Pacific and bring you X, it doesn't tend to work out very well. And there's a lot of kind of bitter people you see around Washington that did that one time or another, and it didn't work out for them, and they're kind of difficult to deal with, frankly. We've tried to flip that and really use this initiative as a way to have a different approach. So over the last year, 6 months, we've really expanded our conversations with the Ministry of Roads and reviving the Transportation Partnership. We've expanded our conversation with Niti Aayog, and the Ministry of Commerce leads on Gati Shakti. We had the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, and they kind of continued a discussion we've had for 2 years now with the Inland Waterways Authority, and it works. General Gibbs can correct me, but I believe I'm fairly confident you'd agree with me. This tends to work a lot better when we kind of show up and we ask questions and find out what people need. In some cases, like say with the Roads Ministry, they have a lot of actually high level of capacity in most areas, and there's very specific areas where they're interested in collaborating and kind of sharing best practices and getting our input on. But a lot of the stuff that you would kind of assume and kind of come in with a prepackaged for, they already know they don't need, and they're rightfully not interested. So it really starts with a conversation. I think in a CDRI context, what is actually helpful would be for more members to be kind of more vocal about what they see as the needs, and then other CDRI members can kind of work with them to develop a response in various collaborations and projects that would address those needs. So it's a two-way street of communication.
Thank you very much, Matt. And I think there's wonderful opportunities for all of us throughout all of our different government agencies. And this is just a snapshot, Kamal. We have many, many more who are not present this evening who can offer opportunities for collaboration with CDRI. As we are running short on time, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up this panel for this evening. I first want to thank our studio audience and our CDRI colleagues for organizing this conference and for being here with us tonight. Thank you very much. I would also like to thank Madame Chargé for your support to this panel and your support to a whole of government approach to our work with CDRI. I want to thank our commercial service colleagues, our Department of State colleague, Department of Energy, U.S. Forestry Service, and USACE. Together, amongst all of you, we heard about the importance of civil-military cooperation, the importance of public-private partnerships, the emphasis on energy as being the keystone, the importance of forestry and how we can find science-driven solutions that are based upon sound data. And finally, the importance of our private sector colleagues in the commercial service. So thank you all for being here this evening. We look forward to next steps after this conference of how we can all engage together. I wanted to take the moment to thank all the speakers today for all of your ideas, your collaboration with CDRI, the CDRI team who is here in our studio audience who has been burning the midnight oil throughout this week to pull off a successful conference. Congratulations for all of your hard work, and thank you for all that you do. And finally, I want to emphasize the U.S. government's push for partnership and inclusion of a greater number of countries to join CDRI's membership, particularly amongst the Global South. Thank you to all of you who are working towards that effort to increase CDRI's membership. It is absolutely key. Have a wonderful evening, and we'll see you back here tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. New Delhi time. Thank you.